And you're welcome along to The Snap, your American football show here on Off the Ball. No Jared Gilroy this week. He's taken cover after Colin Kaepernick made him a bit of an internet sensation last week.
Of that instead.
So do you stand over this misrepresented comment, or have your words been...
No, I believe it was Off the Ball who transcribed it too, so I can't call anyone out here. I'll be calling out a teammate over here. No, I stand by where it was. Like, I've been saying that for a long time. You can't compare Kaepernick to the worst quarterbacks in the league. It doesn't make sense. But the other thing is, the last time Ger wasn't here, we went after Tom Brady, and we turned out to be right. So it's a good sign that Ger's in here.
We picked the Titans to beat the Patriots, if I'm not mistaken. So that was a halcyon day for the Snap. Cian, as someone who's had Colin Kaepernick retweet their stuff in the past, what's that like? Do you have to? Are you under siege on social media?
Yeah, it's not. I'll put it this way: there are a lot of people who support Colin Kaepernick, a lot of people who are with Colin Kaepernick. Those aren't the ones who are motivated to respond to Colin Kaepernick when he says something. You get a lot of abuse, a lot of laughing emojis, a lot of clown faces. You basically, like, once you reach a certain level on Twitter, you have to make use of the advanced filters and just turn off responses from people you don't know. Otherwise, you're just wading through a river of shit every day, and it's just not worth it. But from Kaepernick's point of view, it's kind of nice to see that he's still pushing it a little bit, because we're a few years on. He very easily could have and probably should have lost his willingness to keep believing in his career, believing his career has any chance of being alive. I personally think his career is already over. I think it's been over since the first month he was left out of the league. So for him to keep fighting and him to keep continuing with that and supporting himself is a good thing.
Yeah, and the easily accepted narrative, as you touched on last week, was that he was a fading talent and it was inevitable that he was going to drop out of the league.
No. The league is built on an agreement between the players union, and the owners, the people who run it, and that runs out every couple of years. It's only agreed to a certain distance, a certain amount of years each time, and every single time it comes up, there's all these arguments, and there's all this threatened off seasons in the past, and we've had replacement referees and all sorts of nonsense that makes the game worse and messes the game up. But this year, the real contention baseball that has 140 games a year or something like that. They look at the hockey that has over 100 games a year, and they look at the NBA that has 82 games a year, and they see their own 16-game schedule, and they are always trying to find ways to expand that. Like, they want an 18-game schedule. This time, they've tried to put forward to have a 17-game schedule and change the playoffs, an extra team in the playoffs. That means an extra playoff game, or at least an extra playoff game in the players to play more, and they want them to get the revenue off of those games, off of the TV rights, off of the tickets at the stadium, probably less the tickets at the stadium and more the TV rights, because they want to make as much money as possible. But then you have the other side of this, where we see every single year that these teams are completely broken at the end of a 16-game season. Like, anyone who, with their health, like we saw it with the 49ers, we saw it with the Kansas City Chiefs to an extent, even in Denver during the regular season. So the players are pushing back on this, obviously, just to earn that extra paycheck. And fortunately, you have someone like Aaron Rodgers speaking out against this, because from Aaron Rodgers' perspective, he's a quarterback. He's unlikely to be as huge contract. He doesn't have to worry about his long look after. We've got to get the money is kind of a secondary issue, because the money does appear to be going up, or at least their share of the money. I think they're getting 48% now, or something like that, of the overall revenue. But when you CBA already, it suggests that it's not going to be agreed to. And even though the NFLPA have approved it, the NFLPA is the Players Association, which is just generally useless. So the big contentious points are the extra game, the NFL owners trying to find more ways to make money. It's not like they don't monetize the off season as is. We just have the combine on right now, which has become this this marketing event rather than an actual combine. So it's all about money. It's all about player safety. It's all about finding the right balance between those two things, and that's why it's a very difficult thing to get results.
You're 3 years, so you're not necessarily in that kind of stuff. So, and Richard Sherman, but surely the lads at the bottom playing that extra game and getting increased revenue.
Yeah, but the other aspect of that is the chance of injury. Players don't have guaranteed contracts. So if you're one of those players at the bottom, you don't have guaranteed money. So if you get injured early and your career is then over, like, you don't have any. You play in the NFL, they say, hey, you've got $750,000 after tax. It's probably $400,000 in a single year. You might then have huge medical bills. You might have no job prospects outside of football, because the other way this system is set up, and the other college aren't paid, and players in college are represented in the CBA negotiations. So when the CBA is being discussed, it's current players their chance or a better chance than like if it was just Aaron Rodgers or if it was just the top guys choosing it, because those guys at the bottom are so desperate to get the money that they can get and move. The whole thing is a complete shit show, really. It's a bit of a complete mess. I think that in college is a major aspect that needs to change, because those guys are going toward the NFL. It's not that they're going somewhere else. If you're playing at a high level in college, you should have a say in what the NFL is happening to try and change the way this is all happening. But comes back to the NFL and college being tied together, where players don't have real careers. They have to play for nothing in college and then go for 2 years, 3 years, like you say, in the NFL. Unless you're a top 1% of the top 1% where you get to play a 10-year career, you're not actually getting rich off of football.
Like the compromise would probably be to shorten the pre-season, which has become less and less beneficial in recent seasons, and then play that extra game in the regular season. But in terms of, and it's a secondary thing, obviously, given the more serious concerns you've been talking about, but the dilution of the playoffs, like we've seen extra teams being added to it in recent years, another round of games this time. Do you think the playoffs would be weaker for that?
Oh, absolutely. The playoffs are already kind of weak. Like we enjoyed that Bills-Texans game this year in the wildcard round, but we enjoyed it for all the wrong reasons. It was such a bad game of football. It was so poorly played. Like the Texans had Deshaun Watson, and that was the difference in the end. But the Bills were in the playoffs as a team with a quarterback who wasn't capable of winning that playoff game. Do you want more of that? Not really. Like, you don't really want an extra team. Like, I'm not sure who it would have been this year. I think it would have been the Rams in the NFC. And the Rams this year weren't anything close to a playoff caliber team. You're not going to have anyone come through from that position and win the Super Bowl. Like, you're not going to get the Eli Manning Giants who came from the 6th seed. Like, yeah, it might happen once in 20 or 30 years, but going a further rung down isn't going to add anything beneficial except for an extra game on wildcard weekend, which maybe people want, but I don't think it's a good thing for the sport. Like, part of the reason the NFL is so popular is that scarcity. Having 16 games in a single season means no one rolls their eyes at watching the Lakers play the Pelicans or play whoever is terrible right now in the NBA, where they don't care about those 20 different regular season games they have because they can get into the playoffs with the other 60, and then the actual playoffs are the only things that actually matter. Like you mentioned there, the preseason as well. That's not really a viable argument because, for one, most players who are already on the roster at the end of the year don't play in the third and fourth preseason game anymore anyway. Like, you look at the Bears and the Rams have kind of completely punted those games. And then if you do cut the preseason short, you're taking away guys who are trying to earn jobs. And those are the guys who are really at the bottom rung, the guys who desperately need a contract just to, like, pay their mortgage or rent an apartment or whatever, like, just to survive. These are guys straight out of college who don't have any money. So if they're committing all this time to being on the training squad during the off seasons, and then they're not actually getting a chance in August in an actual game, they're not going to get a job. That's why the XFL matters, and that's why they hope the XFL succeeds. But the idea of cutting a preseason game away also is poor for everyone else involved, because you don't want teams to be slow starters. Like, there's a reason preseason exists. Yes, you can change how you prepare. You can have these competitive scrimmages that teams are going to know that aren't televised, that aren't for the public eye, but you still need to prepare. So for the player's point of view, even if you cut away preseason games and you're doing these competitive scrimmages, it's the same wear and tear on your body. It's the same aspect of hitting and taking hits and playing live football. So all that needs to be kind of torn up and redrawn, and which is something Aaron Rodgers talked about. You need to change the way the offseason is done. He wants more practice, as far as I can tell. Whether that's smarter practice, whether it's safer practice, I don't know. But he wants to change the whole thing, because right now the system doesn't seem to work, and I tend to agree with him.
Yeah. Well, one upshot of all these debates around the CBA is that maybe the sheen, or certainly the focus, has been taken off the Combine a little bit, and also free agency. Just in terms of the Combine, though, has anything caught your eye in the last few days?
Well, it's always the 40 time and who's going to be the fastest player. And I think it was Henry Ruggs from Alabama who went 4.28, I think it was. So they've kind of turned, like, a few years ago, they turned that into an event where the winner got, I think it was 10 grand and a sponsorship from Adidas or something like that. And they've kind of made that, it's like the 100 meters at the Olympics. It's the thing everyone tunes in for. And they've turned that into an event and a marketing event. And that's become the focal point, but it really doesn't matter all that much. The Combine is about finding guys who you were previously high on, and if they if there's as an example, let's say there's an offensive tackle you love, and he's dominating every matchup, and he's blocking everyone, and he's brilliant in his pass blocking sets, and he's run blocking brilliantly, and then he has no reps on a bench press, and he's really struggling to move in agility cone drills. You then have to go back and go, okay, maybe we don't value this guy that much because he's not very athletic. The problem with the Combine when guys are stars or standing out is they train specifically for the combine now. So they're hitting their peak at this time of the offseason. They're not hitting a peak where they can sustain during a football season. So when you see some of the best athletes in the NFL, guys running away from players in the NFL, they don't always have the top scores at the combine because at the combine they weren't hitting a peak the way that their other competitors were. With that said, Chase Claypool out of Notre Dame has been one of the big stories, and the reason you can be excited about him is he's hitting all the measurement points, he's hitting all his thresholds while also having really impressive tape. Him at Notre Dame really stood out. He was talked about, I think, as a second-round pick and a third-round pick. He might be trying to force his way up into that first round, which is interesting because there's already a lot of wide receivers in this draft.
Yeah, and your man C.D. Lamb had a bit of a show reel catch there. I'm sure people can check it out. We're going to switch to free agency. We've been doing some draft previews in the last couple of weeks, but we'll turn to free agency because that's going to be the big story in the coming days and weeks. We'll start with quarterbacks, as we always do, and Ryan Tannehill, your man, Cian, is hot property. What are you making of his chances going into free agency?
Yeah, he's like Brian Tannehill is someone I was always very high on in Miami because it felt like he played in offenses that just simply didn't work. They were designed to fail. They invited pressure and they ran receivers into each other rather than running receivers to space. It was like the opposite of Kyle Shanahan's offense. And then he got Adam Gates and started to play better and kind of made Adam Gates look good. And before he got injured with an ACL tear when Calais Campbell fell on his knee, and then they didn't actually have surgery on an ACL, so he came back a year later than he should have. And then he had a shoulder issue, and his shoulder wasn't working. He couldn't throw the deep ball anymore, and it looked like his career was over. But like 12 months ago, he was being given away for free by the Dolphins, and the Titans just picked him up as an afterthought in the trade. They didn't take a massive pay cut, and now he's entering free agency as like. If we were judging this on performance and outlook and upside, he would be by far the number one free agent option. But because Tom Brady exists and Tom Brady has that aura, even at this end of his career, this late stage of his career, and we talked about this on that previous pod we talked about where Tannehill is probably better than Brady at this point. Because Brady exists, I'm not sure if Tannehill's going to get that huge money that he deserves. And so I wanted to, this week, I kind of focused on him and went through all of his snaps and all of his throws. And I went through it with expecting Tannehill to play well. And then kind of as I watched more and more, I kind of was thinking to myself, yeah, he played well. He played better than I thought he played. He played to a level that was kind of ridiculous. He was making throws 4 and 5 and 6 times a game that most quarterbacks will make 3 or 4 times in a whole season. So the level that he's at, and he's kind of hit his prime, and he's physically healthy, and everything's there. He's got all the tools, and he still hasn't played in a great offense. Like A.J. Brown broke out for the Titans last year, but he broke out as an after-the-catch receiver, as someone who doesn't have a great catch radius, isn't a great route runner. He's an above-average route runner, drops too many passes as well. So it's not like he was playing with great players in Tennessee. So if you take him and drop him into a different offense, you could get a very, very good quarterback and a very, very productive quarterback, and that's a franchise-changing thing. So I think Tannehill should be a huge storyline. He should be a focal point for lots and lots of teams. I just think more of them are going to be distracted by the Tom Bradys and even James Winston, who for some reason is held in a higher regard by NFL people than a guy like Tannehill, who's played much better throughout his whole career.
Yeah, I think bizarrely in the NFL, the words like efficient and functional are used as negative terms around quarterbacks. Where do you think he's going to end up? I know there's talk Tom Brady might go to the Titans if he's going to leave New England. How do you think Tannehill would fit in a Bill Belichick offense?
Yeah, you're on the same page as me here, because that's something I've been thinking about. Because if the Patriots are as comfortable with Brady leaving as everything seems to suggest they are, we have to look at where they're going to go. It's not going to be Jarrett Stidham. That's like, he was drafted last year, but he obviously didn't look anything close to ready. They're not in position to draft anyone, as far as I can tell. And as Roger Goodell said this week, the punishment for their spying on the Cincinnati Bengals is going to come out soon, and that could take away their top draft pick. So they can't bank on drafting anyone. They have Brian Hoyer, I think, on the roster. Like, that's not going to be the answer. So they're going to have to look into free agency or a trade possibly with somebody. So what are your options here? You're talking Phillip Rivers? No, I can't see them swapping out one old quarterback for another old quarterback. Maybe trade for Matthew Stafford? Possibly. I don't know what Bill Belichick would see in that. I don't think Stafford is the type of quarterback he would ever go after. Then you look at Teddy Bridgewater. Yeah, Teddy Bridgewater makes a lot of sense for everyone. But most teams have never been that high on Teddy Bridgewater, and I'm not sure if Belichick's going to be any different. So Tannehill actually kind of makes a lot of sense. And the other aspect of this is, no matter how much you want to criticize Tannehill or talk about what Tannehill can't do, he has very clear and undeniable qualities in that he's very athletic. He has a huge arm. He can hit deep balls, and he's very accurate on short and intermediate throws. So the question marks over him would be, how does he diagnose coverages? Is he able to drop back and play from behind the down distance and make reads constantly and play big and clutch moments? Those aren't questions that I have, but they are the general questions that the wider NFL audience has. So even if you have those question marks, you put him with Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick can still make that work. He's proven in the past. He's done it with when Brady has been injured and when Brady's been suspended, that he can make it work with a quarterback who has a lesser skill set. So Tannehill as a fit there makes a lot of sense, because you're going to a coach who will know exactly what to do with you, and you're going to a coach and you're offering him a skill set that his last quarterback didn't have anymore. So it's going to be a very different type of offense that will allow Belichick to build with Josh McDaniels there as well, who has been known for building offenses for quarterbacks, even though he hasn't really done it that many times in his career.
Yeah, and you mentioned a couple of the other free agent options. Jameis Winston's there as well. Dak Prescott in his own way looks like he's probably going to be franchise tagged, but that contract wrangle is going to run and run, I think. We move on to the running backs now, and I remember when Derrick Henry ran riot against the Kansas City Chiefs, and we were talking about him getting a new deal. You weren't necessarily buying into that, and then he went and his form improved even more into the playoffs. Where do you think the Titans stand on him now? Do you think they're going to sign him to a long-term deal, franchise tag him, or just cut him loose?
Well, quickly on Dak there, just because you mentioned him, I don't think there's any way of him leaving. That's why I didn't talk about him. But I also think that's a crucial detail, because as we'll get to wide receivers, Amari Cooper, there's going to be a knock-on effect there with Dak and the Cowboys and how they spend their money. But yeah, Derrick Henry to the Titans probably has huge value, because they see him as the focal point of their offense, the centerpiece of their offense. But you have to think, if the Titans are being connected with Brady, Derrick Henry doesn't really fit. Like, you're not going to have Tom Brady play under center. Like, that's one thing I noticed as well with Ryan Tannehill charting him. He's under center, executing difficult play fakes a lot, a huge percent of the time. Him and Jared Goff in Sean McVay's offense, and probably Garoppolo with Kyle Shanahan, those are probably the top in the league last year in terms of playing under center and executing deep handoffs, difficult handoffs that require athleticism to move around the field. So I can't see Tom Brady coming in and doing that with Derrick Henry. So if you do go after Brady or go after Rivers or someone like that, you're not going to have a complementary pieces there at quarterback and running back if you re-sign Henry as well. But I do think the Titans are going to re-sign Henry, and I think they're probably going to overpay him before he hits free agency to try and make sure they keep him. It just feels like that's the type of team they are, and it doesn't feel like they're desperately trying to keep Tannehill. It feels more like they're focusing on Henry. I don't think he's going to be worth it. I don't think he's going to be good value. I've kind of been consistent on this. I also think if you look into free agency, a guy like Kenyon Drake, who you can get for probably 1/5 the price, 1/6 the price, is going to be better value. When he went to Arizona this year, he had a big impact and he looked a quality starter. Yeah, you can talk about him in terms of durability and in terms of how much he's going to be used between the tackles. But when you saw Lamar Miller leave Miami, he became a really quality running back for the Houston Texans. And I think Kenyon Drake has followed the exact same path as that, where he's the exact opposite of Henry. He's a smaller guy, great in the passing game, great versatility as a runner, very smart runner, very explosive, very elusive, but it's not really going to break many tackles. He's powerful. He's more powerful than he looks, but that's only because he's small. It's not because he's particularly powerful.
Yeah, and you mentioned Drake and Miller there. Melvin Gordon, who had his own little ructions during the season there, was holding out for a contract that he didn't get, so he's available. Carlos Hyde, who's a perennial free agent, it feels like, and then Jordan Howard is there as well. There's a few others. Before we move on to wide receivers and tight ends, just a reminder that American football on Off the Ball is brought to you in association with the Aer Lingus College Football Classic, Navy versus Notre Dame at the Aviva Stadium on August 29th. Check out collegefootballireland.com for game tickets and more. You already mentioned Amari Cooper there. Cian, is he the pick of the available wide receivers, yeah?
Absolutely. I think you can focus on the drops, you can focus on some of the injury issues he's had as well, but you're kind of missing the point with Amari Cooper. He's uncoverable. He can beat the best cornerbacks in the league. He can make big plays after the catch. He adjusts at the catch point. He runs incredibly good routes. He's so explosive. You've seen when he gets the opportunities to run different routes and run a varied route tree, he's impossible to stop. One of the problems for Cooper is he's played for different offensive coordinators throughout his career, and none of them have really set him up to be the best he could possibly be, maybe with the exception of Kellen Moore this year. And then there was different issues there where Cooper wasn't fully fit and he had a couple of bad drops last year that kind of curtailed his numbers a bit. But overall, as a talent, Cooper has to get top money. He's got to be the primary guy. The problem with Cooper is getting that value, because he is going to command a huge price and he's not Odell Beckham. While I can sing his praises as much as possible, there's an undeniable gulf between him and the very, very top receivers in the league. So you have to turn that into a guy like AJ Green. The only knock against AJ Green is he's coming off an injury hit season and he's old. He's 32. So in Amari Cooper, you're getting a guy in his prime, but you're probably going to overpay a little bit. In AJ Green, you're probably going to get better value for the next 2 or 3 years. You're going to get a top-tier receiver who doesn't have a long-term upside. He will still probably have 5 or 6 years in his career, but it's not going to be a dominant 5 years. He's going to be dominant maybe this year and next year, and then after that, he's going to drop off a little bit. The guy who I kind of like from this group who is a little bit under the radar is Robbie Anderson from the New York Jets. Anderson has never had good service. He's never played in a functional offense. He's had Sam Darnold, Ryan Fitzpatrick, and random different quarterbacks, Josh McCown throwing him passes over the years. So you have to take his numbers in context of his overall situation. And he's a vertical receiver who runs very good routes, who isn't necessarily a burner. He's not Tyreek Hill. He's not Deshaun Jackson, but he's fast enough to take advantage when he sets the defensive backs up early in his routes, which he does very well, does very consistently, and he also has a good catch radius. So if you're looking for someone just to add to your offense, so you've already got quality players there, you look at him. If you're looking for a short-term guy to boost your offense and kind of put you over the top this year, you're looking at AJ Green. And then if you just want to star and you want to pay top money for it, it's Amari Cooper.
Yeah, and before we get to best of the rest in this free agency, like Emmanuel Sanders is there, and you see the kind of impact he has. I think as a locker room guy, as much as a player, he's very talented, but he seems to bring good culture wherever he goes. And then quickly, Cian, just Rashad Perriman, who I know as a Ravens fan came in with high hopes on paper. He looked like a star, but it never quite worked out for him there. He's done some notable things. He was decent with the Browns, good with the Bucks. So is he someone that a lot of teams are going to be looking at?
Well, we can come full circle a little bit here, because Rashad Perriman came out of college as a great athlete and a guy who was like, I don't know how his combine went, but I know physically his selling points were that he is this big guy who can run fast, who's all the agility, all the flexibility, all the jumping ability, can do anything you want. And then he went to Baltimore and just dropped every single pass that came his way. And look, he played with Joe Flacco at the time. The Ravens as a franchise weren't necessarily on the rise they're on at the moment. There wasn't that good feeling about them where you expect young players to develop now. You expect Miles Boykin and Marquise Brown to get better just because of the culture that's there. So he didn't grow. And weirdly enough, he wound up in Cleveland and suddenly had this great spell with the Browns where he was catching everything. And he was just deep threat with Baker Mayfield in his rookie season, making lots of plays. And the Browns actually wanted to re-sign him, but they actually agreed to re-signing with him. But Drew Rosenhaus, who is his agent, is also Odell Beckham's agent. So once they made the Odell Beckham trade, Rosenhaus made a deal with the Browns and said, I want to get Rashad Perriman to a place where he can prove himself and play. And this is a long story just to get to the point of he arrived in Tampa Bay this year on a prove-it deal, and he proved himself. He was like, if you're only talking about last year's performances and you're not talking about overall career and overall perception and reception, the quality of Rashad Perriman's play last year was probably top 2 or 3 in the league in terms of wide receivers. He was ridiculously good. And he was a huge part in carrying Jameis Winston to those big numbers that he had. Like he outshone Mike Evans on that field. He outshone O.J. Howard, who was a tight end but basically plays a wide receiver. He outshone everyone on that field. Like Chris Godwin, who gets all the celebration from everyone because he's an emerging star in Tampa Bay, wasn't as good as Rashad Perriman last year. The problem is the sample size isn't there, and a guy who has dropped the ball a lot is also always very hard to trust. So I don't think he gets a one-year prove-it deal this year. I think a team invests a little bit more into him and rewards him for his recent good play. And I actually think there's a good chance of him being a quality pickup, because there are guys over there in the history of the league who came in as bad pass catchers, who struggled with their technique and fixed it and got better. Nate Washington is one who stands out to me just because when he entered the Steelers, he was just this vertical sprinter who dropped the ball all the time. He played in a Steelers offense that didn't throw the ball that much under Bruce Arians, and they needed him just to stretch the field while Hines Ward and Santonio Holmes caught all the passes. And Washington then developed under Arians and became this very reliable, high-quality receiver in Tennessee. Never had a huge career, was just a solid, strong contributor, very, very good starter, never became a star, but was a very valuable piece. So I think that's the kind of what Perriman is looking at. Maybe that's not what they expected when he came out of the draft because of all his physical attributes, but now it's going to work out for him. He can be just a good NFL player.
Yeah, and just lastly on the defensive and O-line selections here, like there's just, the depth is crazy, so we can't really cover everything. We'd be here all day. But like just names that jump off the page, Chris Jones would probably get tagged by the Chiefs, you imagine. But then Jadeveon Clowney's there, You know, Kyle Van Noy's there, Everson Griffin we talked about last week, Matthew Judon. We talked about the Ravens a lot on this show, and they're still in that Lamar Jackson sweet spot where they've got a lot of cap space and stuff given his small contract, quote unquote. So, like, what do you think? What are you looking at just in terms of all the other available players? Who else jumps out at you?
Like you said, there's so many to choose from. Like Chris Jones is gone; he got franchise tagged yesterday, so he's off the options. But like, I haven't listed them here because there are so many options. I don't really want to talk about one specific guy. Clowney, a very good run defender, good enough pass rusher, will get more money than he probably is worth. But he's a very, very good player, and he makes a massive difference to your team. And he changes up. Seattle probably won't let him leave. If you look at Eric Armstead, crazy athleticism, broke out last year when he played in the interior a lot more for San Francisco, was actually one of the stars of that Super Bowl outside of Nick Bosa and Chris Jones and Mahomes, obviously. But he had a huge game in the Super Bowl, which should help him make a lot of money. Matt Judon, you mentioned. Judon is more of a well-rounded player. He's not a superstar pass rusher. I actually wouldn't be surprised if Baltimore let him go and drafted someone else to replace as an edge rusher and kind of continue to build their front seven, even though they have money. Anthony Harris, a Viking safety, took over for Andrew Sandeo, beat out Georgia Loca, a hard hitter, well-rounded, good range, can play free safety, can play strong safety. He'll get a good contract. Justin Simmons, same thing from Denver. Chris Harris, slot cornerback who has been a superstar in this league for a while. He'll get big money no matter where he goes, and probably a shorter deal. James Bradbury, a long physical corner from Carolina who has massive upside, has never really broken out, has had fits and starts. Leonard Williams didn't have a great career with the Jets, was traded to the Giants last year, is an interior disruptor, can play off the edge a little bit as well. Huge amount of talent, has never put all of his performances together. Where he winds up next could be huge for him. Bradley Roby has already told the Texans he's going to leave. He's a high-quality cornerback, should get a good deal, should be a quality starter somewhere. Tony Jefferson, injured last year, made a lot of mistakes in Baltimore, but has a long career of being a proven veteran safety. Andrew Billings, a disruptive defensive tackle coming off of Cincinnati. Jimmy Smith, another quality cornerback coming off of Baltimore. So we can go on and on forever. And you mentioned Kyle Van Noy there. I think Kyle Van Noy is a very interesting one because he was at Boston, Detroit, and he found his fit in New England perfectly. So New England are always kind of the team to watch when it comes to free agents like this. So you can very much see Bill Belichick rebuilding his offense a lot this year and his defense a lot this year because of the amount of depth of talent that's out there. This is a really interesting offseason, a really good free agency class, and a draft that's shaping up to be really good too. So we could have a lot of changes in the NFL this year.
Yeah, you're spot on. It's an excellent free agency, equally so in the draft. So we're going to keep across that in the coming weeks. That'll do for today, though, Cian. Thanks for calling in.
Do you think we covered enough players?
I think we named ballpark 40-50 and 40-50. Yeah, no, it was good. I think people will be happy with that coverage. Nice one, Cian.
We just read off lists of players from now on. It'll be great.
Brian Tannehill all the way. All right.
Go on.
Cheers, man. That's Cian Fahey there, Off the Balls NFL analyst. That's all for this week. Thanks to producer Enda and John O'Donnell for putting the show together. We'll be back next week.